So thank you everyone for joining today's Meetup Live event, Starting a Successful Group with Meetup organizer Hank Orenstein. Today, Hank is going to be discussing how to start a group successfully. He's going, excuse me, he's going to share some of the steps that you should take before you start, some of the best practices for setting up your group, and how to attract members. So this is perfect for anyone that is starting as an organizer, is thinking about becoming an organizer, or is already an organizer and just kind of wants to zhuzh up their description. So he's going to share how to write a compelling group description, like I said, engage members, and take advantage of some of the Meetup tools. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some housekeeping rules. Wow, wait, where are my manners? I said where I was dialing in from, but I didn't say my name. I'm Janine for Meetup, and I'm the events lead at Meetup. Hello again, and welcome. All right, so let's go over the guidelines. So this event is being recorded, so if you have to leave early, don't worry, we got you covered, but you will not appear on video. You can find a recap and a recording of this event on our blog, meetup.com/blog. Everyone is muted, so don't worry, there is nothing wrong with your volume, it's just you're muted, sorry. And please ask a lot of questions. We love it when you ask questions. We encourage you to ask questions. We just ask that when you do have questions that you please submit them in the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. And another great accessory that we have, excuse me, is closed captioning. We now have closed captioning. Yes, it's available. If you'd like to turn it on, just click on the live transcription icon at the bottom of your screen and you can select your preference. Next slide, please. So right now, I'm quickly going over the agenda and the housekeeping rules, and then I'm going to pass it on to Hank so that he can introduce himself and get started. After that, Hank, like I said, he's going to get started, and after Hank's done, we are going to come back for a Q&A session where I will ask Hank the questions that y'all submitted. So without further ado, I'm going to let Hank take it away.
Okay, thank you, Janine. It's a pleasure to be with you all, fellow Meetup organizers, here on, was it Thursday, January 14th. And what a start to the new year it's been, right? Anyway, I welcome you all, and from all over the US and Canada and elsewhere, delighted you decided to join us. So first, before we get into the presentation, just a little bit about me. So I am here in Harlem in New York City. I am a native New Yorker, and Meetup has made a huge difference in my life. I started my group about 8 years ago, kind of as an experiment, just kind of curious if I would have an opportunity to attract people who have similar interests and passions. So what was my interest and passion that led me to start this group? Well, the name of my group is called Exploring New York City History and Neighborhoods. What my group does, we do walking tours of New York City neighborhoods. I do tours in about 80 different neighborhoods and communities. New York City has about 400 of them, so I'm still scratching the surface really, but I do tours probably the most interesting neighborhoods as far as architecture, culture, and history. And I cover the history, both past, present, and future, because people are always interested in what's going on in the neighborhood today. You know, so people want to take in cultural events, stroll through parks, hear live music somewhere, eat some delicious food, ethnic or otherwise. And so fast forward, so it's 8 years later, and I have about 6,400 members. I've done well over 400 events. And I've made many new friends in the course of having this group. People have made lasting friendships and relationships by virtue of being part of the group. And of course, I should mention that until the end of March of last year, all my events are in person. But I'm sure, again, because of the pandemic, which we are continually challenged by, I shifted to online experiences starting in April. And then for a few months, when New York City was doing really well with the pandemic, our case count was okay, and with social distancing and masks, it was comfortable doing some events outdoors, doing some walking tours and events, although with a smaller number of people. Usually, I would have 30 and went down to a maximum of 15. And then lo and behold, just starting a couple of months ago, I went back to online. We got hit with the winter and a resurgence of the pandemic. So as I do the presentation, as I created this presentation, also taking into account, of course, that the pandemic is still with us. And it is a challenge to successfully start and engage people, doing online events. I found there is actually a benefit to doing online events. Like for me, I can actually have more people participate, and there's still many ways of making meaningful and ongoing connections to have a successful ongoing group for online. And of course, we all hope that, in the near future, we'll be able to resume in-person events. Some of you may already be doing that, depending on where you are and what the COVID guidelines are. So anyway, without further ado, that's just a little about me. I also want to say, yes, I am a licensed New York City professional tour guide. I've been doing tours for about 20 years. I'm also a professional real estate broker and agent in New York City, working for the prestigious Corcoran Group. And I have a master's degree in social work. So I have a long career helping those in need in various places around the city and the country, including working with survivors of child abuse, working with homeless individuals and families and persons challenged with mental health issues. So that's all for me. And now we're going to go to you and your group and how we can help you and guide you in making for a successful meetup experience as an organizer. Okay, I'm a little technologically challenged, so I'm going to see if I can bring on the presentation here. Okay, people see the, okay, you should see hopefully a screen that says setting the stage and getting organized. Can you see that?
We see it, Hank. You're good.
All right. Hey, got it on the first try.
Go, Hank.
I do a lot of these Zoom meetings, both for my professional work and for my meetup work, but I'm used to just kind of doing it a different way. So anyway, so yeah, let's so setting the stage and getting organized. Okay, so my first hot tip is that for those of you that have yet to start your group, to organize your first event and have it ready to post. Again, this is, pertains to people who are just like getting started. You haven't fully gotten your group going on Meetup. So what do you include in your group description? You clearly state the purpose and the group goals, describe some of the activities that you're planning. I have learned that people are really curious. They want, if they're gonna join a group, they want to get some sense of kind of, what you have planned for the future. So even if you only have one event in your group description, talk about what you're strongly considering having as future events. You may even want to, again, if you're starting online, you might want to talk about what you hope to be doing once you can resume doing in-person events. Especially important, of course, for groups that have a major social component as well. All right, so you want to describe some of the venues you plan to use, again, once we resume in person. And of course, and whether your events will be virtual, in person, or both. Okay, what else to include? Yeah, so you want to let people know what the times of the week, are they going to be daytime, evenings, weekends? I've learned through doing many events for many years that I tend to vary times, depending on the event, to allow members when maybe have different schedules, and not everyone has the same amount of free time to participate in our meetup events. And then, of course, very important, you want to be clear if the events are free or if there are any costs or fees involved and what those costs are. And of course, what the justification is for those, for those costs. You don't want to appear that you're kind of just doing this to make money, which some of us are. I mean, that's obviously, if you're making some type of, obviously you're spending a lot of time planning events, so it's certainly justified to to make a little money, but you want to be careful about the fact that many people maybe are having some financial struggles during this time. People may have lost their primary source of income, and so forth. But certainly, I do a combination of free events and events that charge where there's money involved. Usually that comes with bringing people into a museum. We're having a special private tour in a museum or a cultural historic site, and we have to pay the guide and that cultural venue. Then of course, it makes sense to charge money as part of your registration. So in your group description, and I have a few examples coming up, and you'll be able to get a copy of this presentation too, because I know that you won't be able to remember everything that we're covering here in the presentation. So yeah, so how will prospective members know that this group is for them? So again, you want to give as much detail, as possible, because there might be other similar groups. So another message I have is, do your homework. If look on Meetup and see if there are groups similar to yours in your area. If if your Meetup group is really geographic or focused, and you want to see how you can differentiate your group from others that already exist. Because remember, there are many thousands of groups out there. I find one of the key successes to my own group is really providing an opportunity for people to meet others have similar interests and passions. Okay, so here's a sample group description of both a long one and then a short one that I think really do a nice job at covering the bases. I really like this group description because it begins with a series of questions. That's a nice way to get people interested and to engage them right from the start of your description. So you can take a second to glance at that. And you notice in the second paragraph, it describes the variety of activities that the group is going to participate in. Okay, here's a different type of group. The Harlem Grow Group is really social and sort of neighborhood oriented. By the way, when we talk about Harlem has about 400,000 people. That would make Harlem about the 32nd biggest city in the United States. So Harlem has more people than cities like New Orleans, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati, and close to the population of the city of Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, the suburbs have many more people than the city itself. So yeah, so this is the Arizona Art Scene Group. So again, very clear, even though it's kind of short and sweet and to the point. Says it's for everyone who loves art, makes art, and want to be part of the art scene, right? And describes a different form of art, including film, independent filmmaking, painting, writing. Okay, let's get on to choosing the setting for your Meetup events. Of course, first things first, are you hosting virtual, meaning online or in-person activities? By the way, I really found the Meetup platform really easy to indicate if your group is going to be online, and then of course you can add in your link, your Zoom link, to your event once you plan it on your Zoom account. Okay, if you're doing in person, or even when you resume doing in person, make sure you're conforming to any COVID guidelines and restrictions in your area in terms of the numbers of people and in terms of masking and social distancing. Even with the vaccine rollout, I think most health experts are anticipating we're going to be wearing masks for quite a while, even as we gradually return to more normal activities. So again, as an organizer, you can establish your own requirements. In New York City, we had the added challenge is that there are people that travel into the city from surrounding states, especially Connecticut to the east in New Jersey, to the west, and we had, we've had phases where, non-essential activities are discouraged from people traveling from one state to another. So, for example, when I resumed in-person events, in the summer, and then we got those restrictions, I actually had to tell people who were planning on, coming in from New Jersey, sorry, I want to conform to the guidelines and restrictions. So just making that real in terms of an example. Yeah, so consider including a disclaimer indicating that by participating in an in-person event that they're assuming an element of risk and will not hold the organizer liable. It's just a suggestion. If you want to dig deeper, you can, consult all your specific policies, or maybe even if you have an attorney friend or relative or attorney, wouldn't hurt to do that. Really to be on the safe side and be careful and cautious. Okay, if you're going to indoor settings, you want to make sure you check with the venue in advance, again, regarding any restrictions or requirements. For example, museums may be open to the public. Our large museums are open here in the city, but they're not having, most of them are not having any organized groups come in. Restaurants may welcome the business, but not for large groups, again, because of COVID requirements and physical distancing safety, and also for limited capacity. Okay. For outdoor settings, you want to be mindful of access to restrooms. Public restrooms can be a challenge during COVID. It has been in New York City, so I really had to spend a lot of extra time, when we've had outdoor activities, to make sure that there are restroom opportunities. And depending on where you're located, for whether it's indoor or outdoor venues, be mindful for ease of access by public transportation or ease of parking. I often include descriptions on transportation options when I have meetup events. You really want to make it as user-friendly as possible. You kind of have to walk the fine line. You don't want to treat people as infants, you want to treat people as responsible adults, and they can figure out their own way to get to your event. But you want to find some reasonable guidelines, particularly if it's an area that's not particularly, familiar. Obviously, if I was having people meet in Times Square, people should be able to figure that out. But, depending on where you are, there might be more, obscure locations, and therefore provide some transportation options. Should you make your group private or public? So yes, this is an option when you set up your group, and very, very important, because if you decide to make your group private, you cannot revert back to making it public, okay? So this ensures that members who have already joined your group, thinking that it's private, can maintain their privacy, okay? So if your public group is public, then anyone can scroll and surf, so to speak, on Meetup and find your group and find your event. I think if it's a private group, people can certainly find the name of your group. Let's say it's a topic of interest, and they see that, oh, okay, but then they will see if it's a private group that only they only be able to know all the details about the events if they actually join and agree to join your private group. So why would you make your group private? What are some considerations? I would say, and might be different schools of thought on this. I mean, this is an individual choice that you have as an organizer. So I would say if the primary focus of your group is, is social, such as singles groups, people looking to meet people for, potentially, shorter long-term relationships, that might be a good reason to make it private. Also to prevent people from sort of crashing your group, or and similar types of activities. And also if it has a very special interest that will require people potentially disclosing personal finance situations. Let's say if it's a group for real estate investors, or if it's a group with a particular political or a spiritual, religious perspective or practice. So yeah, so those are some reasons why you want to consider making your group private if the nature of your group fits into some of these categories. Ultimately, it's your choice. Okay. So when you set up your meetup group, you actually can list questions that would you like your prospective members to answer when they join. This is really, really important. The more you learn about why people chose to join your group, the more opportunities to engage with them. And it also can help you shape your group's activities in the future, influence some of the choices you make, knowing why people join the group. And you won't know why they join the group unless you have join questions. So yeah, so this is just some suggestions. What interests you about being part of this group? What kinds of activities would you like look forward to participating in? Um, are you new to our area? This is something that I include in my group because you know many people keep moving to New York, less so during the pandemic, of course, but people typically move to New York City from all over the US, from all over the world, every corner of the planet. So I love to learn if someone's really new to the city, and that helps me and how I respond to them, which I'll cover in a second. During COVID, you might want to ask, do you prefer online activities over in person? It may or may not be an appropriate question depending on where you are. Are you willing to partake of in-person activities in accordance with COVID safety guidelines in our area? And again, these are questions that really, pertain to the current situation in which we find ourselves. And then other questions specifically relate to the type of group that you're organizing. So what should you not ask for of people, initially? Again, if it's a very specialized group where you're focusing on, there's some groups that are actually into different types of philosophy. So, those might be appropriate questions for that group. But obviously, some of this is common sense, like obviously, so your social security number, why would you need that, right? So yeah, so things that are very private, your person's health situation, sexual orientation, how much money they make, race or ethnic origin. Yeah, and of course, I do note there are meetup groups for people to bring people together who are of a similar nationality. Like for example, in New York City, we have expats from like many different countries. So there might be meetup group for people who are from Belgium, for example, or from from Venezuela or what have you. So yes, obviously it really depends on the group, your questions to avoid. Okay, organizer bio. This is something that's probably underutilized amongst the community of organizers on Meetup. And the reason why this is important is that people are going to take the time to join your group. They want to know something about you, not necessarily just your qualifications of what makes you qualified to lead your group, but what your why you started the group, including your any related interests and hobbies, and relevant educational and professional experience. Again, that underscores your ability to provide a great experience, an informed experience for people. So yeah, so again, think about what makes you the ideal person to lead this group. What are your qualities? And at the end, what is your why, your motivation for starting the group? And this is something that I have in my own description. What results will tell you that your group is successful? This is something really more to think of yourself as you fully organize your group and utilize the Meetup platform settings to impart your information to your potential members. And this is important. So you can include your biographical background information in two places, both in the description in your Meetup profile, which you use across the board, like for Meetup groups that you join. For example, I'm a member of about 7 other Meetup groups, so my profile is my profile for all those groups. But in the About section of your own group, you can actually tailor your bio that makes sense for your own group that you are leading and organizing. Okay, your welcome message. This is really, really important. So when you write up your welcome message, I would say do it in a draft form, and maybe, again, if you're just getting started, to test it out with someone you know, a trusted friend or family member, or an existing member who maybe is a friend or colleague of yours. If you already have your welcome message, maybe think about revisiting it. Maybe you can tweak it or build on it to make it that much more stronger and compelling. So yeah, so you want to, in your message, and what this is that when people join your group, they will automatically receive your welcome message that you have set up in your organizer platform. So you want to thank them for joining. You want to be, upbeat and enthusiastic, not necessarily over the top enthusiastic, but just kind of communicate that you're happy that they join. I want to mention, talk about, restate very briefly the group's purpose. They already joined because, they liked the description of the group. So you don't, so that you can, exclude that if, depending on your group. Talk about some upcoming activities, and a great way to engage people right from the start. Invite their suggestions. Again, depending on the nature of your group. You might want to include some important information regarding COVID precautions, and let's say you learn that 30 days from now you'll be able to resume in-person events for people who are comfortable doing so. That's something you might want to mention in your welcome message. So yeah, so I'm not going to read all this. This is the welcome message for my own group. So here, so again, hi, welcome to our meetup group of neighborhood explorers and history lovers. Thank you for joining. So there's kind of my enthusiasm. And I talk about the activities, and yeah, and just some basic policies and guidelines, including cancellation policy. Our tours most of our experiences are free, and so forth and so on. Again, your welcome message is going to be congruent to the nature of your group and the types of activities. And yeah, engaging new members. So you want to make sure that in your email settings for your group, for your group that you've organized, you're going to see there are a whole bunch of options. So you want to make sure that you receive an email when people join your group. You can also choose to receive an email when people leave your group, and you should definitely look at all of those. Another important one is you can opt to receive a notification when someone posts a message on your group's event page, for example. So yeah, so let's assume that your settings allow you will see you'll see when people join, and remember, they're going to give you a welcome message. You might want to not duplicate your welcome message. Maybe wait a little while, maybe the next day or later that day, and send them a thank you to new members, a more personal thank you. So how is this different than the general welcome message? Well, remember that you will have asked them questions to answer, to find out what their interests are while they've joined your group. So you can simply build on that. You look at their responses, and then you could say, hey, I see that you love to take long walks in the city. I say, oh, I see you love to do landscape painting. So yeah, so you can build on that common ground that you have with them, and again, not go overboard. But it's a nice. People love to be acknowledged, so you can simply again learn something about your new members from how they answered your questions, and you can again build on that in your own personal thank you and welcome message. Okay, so prior to planning events, you really want to be as organized as possible so that in the future, You want to make sure that people have a really highly positive first experience. And this is something that I've learned very, very strongly, that by taking the time to plan and run a successful event, it helps ensure people will come to future events and tell their friends about this wonderful group that they've discovered. So again, well-planned event announcements have clear details and instructions. You want to instill trust and confidence. It's especially true during this pandemic period, right? Uh, and you also want to send a reminder announcement prior to your event with your thank you for RSVP. That's once you've planned the event and you're starting to get your RSVPs. And you can do this, you can send a reminder anyway, again, depending on the event. If it's an evening event, you can send it the morning of or a day or two before, or again, 2 or 3. I mean, it's a personal choice. I've done it sort of every which way. Okay, so you've planned your event, you've set up your group, and created pathways to engage your new members and to learn about them. So we're getting into now, actually during your event. By the way, all the pictures that are posted here are from events that took place before the pandemic. So you will see people without masks. The events that I've done during the pandemic, everybody was wearing masks and we're practicing, safe social distancing. Okay. So again, whether it's in person or online, you want to acknowledge your new members and first timers to make them feel welcome. Obviously easier to do in person, and also easier to do if you have a small group. I've done this, with as many as 30, 35 people. Bullet point 2, having members actually briefly introduce themselves. So what I do is I have people say, basically take 20 seconds to say their first name, where you are from originally, where you live now, if they want to add what they do professionally, or if they're a student, unemployed, retired. I have found that helps people make connections with each other and gets them, talking later. I really found this a really great way for people to really enjoy the group and learn something about their fellow members. You can also do this online, again, if you don't have, a huge number of members, because obviously if you have 50, 100 people, you do your introductions, time's up, meetup is over, right? Okay. All right, continuing on during the event. So again, depending on the nature of the event, if it makes sense for you to have a break, whether it's online or in person, I always like to do a check-in to see if people are doing and how they're enjoying the event, see if they have any questions. Of course, in person, it's easy. People can just shout out their question as long as give them the space and time to do that. And of course, if you're doing online, I always, in the beginning, tell people to put their questions into the chat, and I will address some of those questions during the break. Again, sometimes I do very long walking tour experiences that take up, 3 to sometimes 5 or 6 hours, including traveling from one place to another. So again, breaks are important. People can rest their legs, ask questions, socialize. Okay, so before you end, or at the point that you're ending your meetup event, again, whether online or in person, you want to thank people for participating. I have found that it's hard for people to maybe give complete, honest feedback, in front of others. So you might, have to wait to they private message you or post comments to get more specific feedback. But you can tell from people's body language, facial expressions, or or how they respond at the end. How they liked the experience. Encourage people to post to share photos on your Meetup groups page, and to remind people to post their review, of course, which is important. So yeah, and we're not done. So after your event is over, there are things that you can do to, again, to help you ensure continuing success with your group. Is again to thank your members for attending and state you look forward to seeing them at future events. And important in part of the Meetup platform is you have the ability to send emails to all your group members, people who are members at large, not necessarily attended the event. Then you can send message to people who attended the event. You can also use that same platform to send a reminder to all people who have registered or RSVP'd for that particular event. Also, you can in this follow-up email, you may want to also include any, let's say people had an particularly interest in something in the experience. You might want to send some information or links to enhance their experience. And people say, wow, that's so thoughtful, so you can go above and beyond and ensure success of your group by going the extra mile to really be mindful of the questions that people had during your event, what they seem to be interested in, what they would like to learn or know more about. Yeah, and as I mentioned, again, just a reminder, share relevant links, even videos, recommended readings to enhance your members' experience of your group and the event. By the way, this was some years ago. This picture here. So I actually did a walking tour of the west side of Manhattan, our wonderful Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, which is basically west of Times Square in our Broadway theater district. So in the summer, they're all wonderful free concerts throughout the city. We just every night of the week, weekend days. So at the end of the of our walking tour, invited people to hang out and dance some salsa. There are these organizations that actually have free salsa lessons, and then they have the band play, and people can either dance or watch. So I just thought I would mention that. Okay, so you also want to take stock and make adjustments, in going forward and planning your future events. Pull back, think about your takeaways, look at the feedback. Also, what was your experience of the event? Did you get out of it what you wanted in terms of, the people that participated, whether was it the sufficient attendance you were looking for? If it was a participatory event, did people participate enough? So you want to think about what went well, and also what you can build on, what you felt you could do better next time. And by the way, even though I have done over 400 events, I would say most of them pretty successful, there's always something to be learned for the future. There's always some takeaway. Again, so you want to identify, use the feedback that you got and your own assessment to build on your events for your future and make them successful. Okay, all right. So I think that's.
Hi, Hank, I'm back. Yeah, you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Hank. Thank you. Thank you for all that information. You shared so much, and we have a ton of questions for you.
Okay.
First, I'm going to say, Hank mentioned it at the beginning, and I did as well. So you'll be able to access a recording and a recap of this event, which will include Hank's presentation on our blog, meetup.com/blog. So for those of you that asked about getting access to the presentation or this recording, you can definitely get it. It'll be available sometime early next week. Again, it's on our blog, meetup.com/blog. And I'm going to get to the questions because there are a ton of questions.
That's great.
One question for you, Hank, is from Susan H. She asked, when you state reminder emails, do you mean the automated emails that Meetup issues or the organizer's personal reminder?
I recommend your own personal reminder. Like, for example, especially during COVID, which is like, in terms of particularly when we're doing in person, and having to conform to the COVID restrictions and guidelines, I found doing my own personal reminder was important. Also in New York City, like, for example, for people who've ever ridden the New York City subway, there are always changes, because it's an old system making repairs. So I find really just for practical reasons, I often might have to, report a change in how to get up to the meetup location. And even with online events, a lot of people, it took a while for them to get used to, Zoom presentations. Not everybody is tech savvy. So I also use the own personal reminder through the Meetup platform that I write, not as opposed to the automatic one sent from Meetup for people's calendars, to again provide just succinctly instructions and reminders about using Zoom or anything specifically that pertains to the event that people should know. Also, the other thing that I do is that one thing that's a common challenge in Meetup is that oftentimes many people register and sign up and then don't show up. For me, that's actually makes an impact, because when I do not so much for online, but when I do walking tours, I can't, I have to have a limit. I have to cap it usually at 30 or 35 people. I have a very loud New York voice out in our neighborhoods, but so I have to cap it. So therefore, if people RSVP and they don't show up or they cancel the last minute, they're preventing somebody on the waiting list. I didn't talk about the waiting list, and that again depends on the nature of your group. Waiting, is very important, and you can read up on the Meetup platform, I believe, Janine, how people can manage waiting list, right?
Hank, a lot of people actually asked about no-shows.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay, there you go.
But yeah, so I'm glad that you touched on it. Like, people wanted to know how do you limit the number of no-shows? And someone also asked, if you're renting out a venue, what do you do? Sorry, here, I'll get it for you right now. How do you recommend organizers who have events that require the organizer to pay for a venue ensure that they aren't left footing the bill with no-shows?
Okay, I believe that you can require people to pay as part of registering for the event, correct? I believe, yeah. So you can do that. So in other words, you can require people to pay up front as part of their registration. In other words, no ticky, no shirty, as we say in the old school world. And then you have to put in, people invariably try to cancel at the last minute. And so you want to have a no refund policy within a certain time frame. So depending on the nature of your event and how much money we're talking about, you might want to say, yeah, if people cancel, no refunds, after 72, within 72 hours of the event or within 24 hours of the event, or a longer period. Again, if you're renting a venue. So also, some organizers actually penalize people who don't show without communicating. They don't say, sorry, I had to walk my dog. I actually have had people say that.
Isn't that like the same excuse, like someone, the dog ate my homework?
Right, exactly.
I remember using that one once when I was a teenager.
No. Yeah, no, but I've been doing this for 8 years. So I've seen all kinds of both legitimate sounding and not very legitimate sounding excuses for people not showing up. But I make it clear from the get-go that, by not showing up, you're taking the space of someone who really very much wanted to attend. And therefore, you could choose to put people on notice. You can do 2 strikes and they're out. If I mean, this is one of the bigger challenges, I think, for all organizers, is people not showing up, not taking it seriously. I've actually said to people in person is that, if you're not, if, by not showing up twice now, you're communicating to me, you really don't take this group seriously. So tell me whether, you would like another chance. Otherwise, I suggest you find some other groups to attend or
Does it
start your
work?
own group.
Does that normally work?
Yeah, that actually has worked by, I think, if you show that you really care about your group and that you connect, you connect people, you let people know the impact they have on others, from a caring perspective, that by not showing up, they're taking the space of other people. If your group is open-ended, let's say it doesn't matter whether you have 17 or 170 people, you might have to approach it differently, but at least I know from my group, because in person, I actually have to cap it. And also online groups. I mean, I actually have, my Zoom account is up to 500 people. So I haven't had so much of an issue, with no shows. But the other thing that I've done when I notice a pattern, with people, it depends how much time you have to kind of micromanage your group, right? And how important it is to deal with people who are not showing up, especially if they do it more than once. I've shout out to people and let them know, hey, appreciate your being a member of the group. I've noticed that this is the second time that in this month that you signed up and didn't show up. What's up with that? I've even taken the step of having a phone conversation with people just to show that I take this really seriously. So the thing is though, if you kind of let it string along, if like you have repeat no showers and you don't do any kind of intervention or communication, you're probably that sends a message that, hey, this is just a really I like this group, but it's kind of lax. I'll show up when I feel like it. So you really want to send a different message. And you can establish that, think about the presentation we just did as far as, your, the description of your group. You can actually create a policy of how you plan to deal with not showing up. So, so I would suggest drafting your no-show policy to make that clear from the get-go and to send a message that, you understand things might happen at the last minute. Someone might get sick, with COVID. Someone might, I've had people, even, people outside of Meetup tell me, oh my God, I was just exposed to somebody. I tested negative, but I have to quarantine for 2 weeks, or, or I have to go get tested, because of an exposure situation. So things like that might happen more during this pandemic than normal. But that being said, you really want to create a clear expectation in terms of what you expect from your members in terms of taking your group seriously and showing up if it turns out that they cannot attend, to inform you as much in advance as possible. And then depending on the reason why they didn't, the reason they give you, for not coming to the event, you address that, on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Hank. So Aaron asked, when you first started your Meetup group, what is your #1 rule for engagement with your group members? Thanks and congrats on your success. Love, New York City.
Okay, thank you.
We love New York City.
All right. New York City we're a most resilient place with incredibly resourceful people from all over the world, and we are going to come back more fully, I think, perhaps towards the end of the year. So thank you for your question. I think probably the single most important thing that I did that really made a difference is having group members at an event actually briefly introduce themselves. People started to make interesting connections, and I would interject and kind of ask maybe follow-up questions. And then, by the way, at the end, I also reintroduce myself. I forgot to mention that during the presentation. So let's say, you have 15 people in a talking circle. I'm talking about in person or online. Yeah, I would always go last and then thank people for taking the time to introduce themselves. If I had to pick out one thing, I would say that was the most, because what would happen is that during the course, since we did that right at the beginning, during the course of the event, during a break or even afterwards, I'd see people exchanging email addresses and phone numbers because they made a connection, in part because of being actually introducing themselves. Also facilitates networking even for work and business. So I vote for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Hank. Okay, so we have a few more questions here, and I know we're running out of time. We have about 8 minutes left. So David asked, how does Hank handle handout attachments to event announcements or advanced communications with RSVPs?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, particularly because I do these historic and cultural walking tours, generally in person. Typically, I mean, for the most part, until last year, really, I actually give handouts as a souvenir memento of the event. That's something that's also actually made a difference. I get a lot of positive feedback. People treat it as a keepsake. It's sort of like a kind of like a summary of what people experienced during the event, because when you talk, not everybody remembers, just like you're not going to remember everything in this presentation, which is why you're going to receive a copy courtesy of Meetup. Also, what you can do is in your when you send your personal RSVP message, you can include links to important and useful information. For example, I've included links for transportation options to get to a venue. Again, this is prior to the event. Another thing you can do, I think there is a platform on Meetup where you can actually post information relative to the group. That's not something I use very much. I forget what that particular particular platform is. I'm blanking on that, but it's not something that I use. Also, the other thing is that, again, this is sort of getting off topic, but it is relevant to your question. You could choose to create a Facebook page for your group, and you can actually post information there that's relevant to your events.
Thank you, Hank. So Anonymous asked, I inherited a group from a colleague. Is there a tactful way to re-interview current members to get a sense of their interests and commitments?
Yeah, you could do, well, I think when there's a change in leadership, I think it's a reasonable thing to do. You as the new organizer, you might have a slightly different focus. You might want, you can also say, I'd love to find out from you what your experience was, with the group before, since I'm now the new organizer, and so I think that makes perfect sense to do that. So I don't think it's a matter of, I think you could just do it, make sense and do it directly, but making the communication that you really value, their input, and you want to learn about what they're interested in doing with the group going forward. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Hank. That makes perfect sense. Bara, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Bara asked, Hank, can you please explain why you have lead time between when you post the event and when people can RSVP?
Oh yeah, that's that's something I don't do with online events. The reason, this goes back to like my first few years. What would happen is that I always have new people joining the group over time. Every day about five new people join my group every day on average. So every again, this is my 8th year. So every year I'm getting just a large number of people joining. So the reason I did that, when I had immediate sign up, it seemed, again, with 7 of 8 years, I do in-person events, and I have a limit, right? I can only maybe have 30 or 35 people. So by having immediate sign up, it's benefiting people who spend more time on their phones and computers. For example, there might be people, because of the nature of the work or the nature of their lifestyle, maybe they only check their emails once a day, or they're not in a position to check their messages. What if they're working in a hospital, for example? So I learned that I would start to see, with immediate sign up, I would start getting the same very similar group of people. So that's why I have a delay to give people chance to plan ahead, to sign up, and then I vary those RSVP times. It's something I go back and forth on. I've thought about. On occasion, I actually do immediate sign up just to kind of mix things up. But for the most part, for my in-person events, I allow some lead time. The other thing that I found is that people would, if I do immediate sign up, some people, they want to be sure they're getting a spot. So they immediately sign up without even reading the event description. On April Fool's Day, I thought of like doing a goof event just to test that theory, saying, join us for a trip to the moon and see how many people sign up. And if people signed up, that would tell me that they didn't read it. I'm sort of, half joking. But the reason, because some people actually just sign up to be sure to getting a spot, and then they end up being a no-show. Because they didn't read the full description. So that's my long-winded rationale for having a lag time between announcing the event and allowing RSVPs. It gives people a chance to consult their calendars, allows for people to plan their schedules so they can RSVP when the time and day opens up.
That makes a lot of sense. How much, so does the time in between, does that change depending on the event, Hank?
Yeah, it depends on how long in advance I plan events. Sometimes I plan events fairly spontaneously. I've even done, once my group membership reached like into the many of thousands, once in a while I would post an event for the next day, because it turned out, I found out there's something really cool going on in the city. Like, what I do in the summer, sadly not this past summer, is actually have a walking tour, and then we end at a live concert. For example, Marcus Garvey Park in Harlem, or on the Hudson Riverfront, or we have so many of these outdoor concert venues, and that's purely optional. So sometimes I'll build in, sometimes I wait to see what the weather's going to be like. Since my events are outdoors, weather is very important. And by the way, ordinarily I tour all winter. I've even done tours in the snow. And some people actually really love winter and like the snow. You just got to be careful with your footing.
Thank you, Hank. So we're at time. Thank you for all the great information that you shared. Thank you for coming on today. Sharing the best practices and answering all of these questions. We really appreciate you being here today. And before we go, there's one last slide. So I just want to encourage everyone right now to pull out their phones and to scan the QR code on the screen. Great news, in case you don't know, Meetup launched its first ever podcast last week, Keep Connected with Meetup CEO. And in the podcast, it would feature David Siegel, our CEO, having conversations with community experts and strategists, as well as with organizers who share how Meetup positively impacted their lives and the community. So please scan away. Otherwise, thank you very much. Have a great day and have a great weekend. Again, you can get you can access the recording and the recap of this event on our blog, meetup.com/blog. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.